So we know that feelings themselves are not facts. They will never be facts, but that doesn't mean that you don't feel them in your body. And that's what we're going to talk about today is processing your feelings, right? We know about accepting things. Sometimes you have a hard time accepting it. But what happens when you get to the space of where you are accepting things, but you're not sure exactly how to process your feelings? That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the Positivity Experience, baby. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and I'm so excited that you're here because I cannot wait to talk to you about this. This is really a topic. I'm going to tell you this every week, but this is really a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that has helped me on my journey. It's something that I help my clients with. And over on Patreon today, we are going to continue what we finish here. You know, I like to go deeper on the Patreon and give you a worksheet so you have sort of like a place to start. And if that's something that you're interested in, you can just, anywhere that you're getting this podcast right now, there's a description in it and there's going to be a link in there for Patreon, or you can visit patreon.com/the Positivity Experience. But let's get into it because I'm really excited about it. So I want to talk to you about these feelings, right? It's hard sometimes for you to get past your feelings and emotions. And the idea here, the theory, and a very effective theory, is to be able to have your feelings and process them and then be able to release them. This doesn't mean you forget things. This doesn't mean that, all of that like just goes away and disappears. No. But what it does do is it allows you to free yourself up from this emotional bind, because where you get yourself in a lot of problems and a lot of trouble is attaching. That's already, anytime you say attaching, that's already going to be an issue, but attaching your emotion as something that is going to be the rock as to how you do or don't do something. You can't do that because your emotions very often are going to lie to you because they're based in experience. So number one, I'm going to talk to you about 10 things today. That's right. I'm giving you 10. And then we're going to do, like I said, a little exercise on Patreon to kind of help you through some of these. But I'm going to give you a lot of information here. So, I know a lot of you are driving, cleaning, stuff like that. So you'll have it on loop. You'll know where I am. And it's good to kind of go back and kind of update and kind of do that. So first and foremost, let's talk about feelings themselves, right? So feelings, everything in our life is based on a program and an experience, right? You and I can grow up in the same exact house. We're twins, okay? We grew up in the same exact house, the same exact parents. We see literally same exact thing, no favoritism, none of that. And I could see myself going, oh my gosh, childhood was traumatic. And you could see the childhood is like, what are you talking about? That wasn't traumatic. Both of us are right. Okay. Both of us are right because it's how you perceive it. But this is where you got to get clear. Everybody else doesn't have to perceive it as you perceive it. You don't have to convince them and you don't have to try to change them. So being a human being and an emotion is based on the program and experiences in which we've had in our lives, right? So some of you can be more quote unquote sensitive, all of these things. This gives you a reason, but never an excuse. And it's a good starting point. So number one is to know that we as human beings, we're going to have feelings. Right? You're not abnormal for having feelings. You're going to have feelings. It's going to be based on experience, based on certain beliefs. Limited beliefs will come into here as we talk about it because limited beliefs can be very problematic. And that's why you want to unbox that and go back to your core values. I did a podcast on core values. I highly encourage you to go back because it's going to really help you kind of understand it. So number one is when you start with your feelings. Let's say, well, it doesn't, obviously, if you have feelings of happiness, those are still worth reflecting on because then you can go, oh my gosh, this feeling. See, the problem is that you attach an emotion and feeling to a person or a situation, but that's not what we're doing here. To process your feelings is not to process the external right now. It's to process the feeling. So let's say it's in a happy state and you just feel at peace. You feel really relaxed. What you want to do is you want to harness that feeling because you can transfer that feeling into other areas. This is how, when you start to feel really down at times, you know that you have the capability of feeling a certain way. So it's holding on to the feeling state. It's not the person state. Okay. So, but self-reflection, let's say we're going to go a little bit deeper. You want to always engage in self-reflection. And this means not distracting yourself by going out, not surfing surfing Instagram and TikTok. And you can't sit there and spend all day on this just because you're like, oh my God, I don't really want to reflect. Well, if you don't reflect, you're going to keep living on this loop of your emotions and your feelings. right? Until you are ready to feel it and go directly through that fire, you are not going to heal it. It's just not going to happen. You're just going to keep constantly having it on loop. So here's some good questions to ask yourself, right? Like while you're doing that, like, what is it that triggered me, right? And so like when you say, okay, what is it that triggered me? You say, well, they yelled at me. Okay, that was a trigger. Remember, your triggers are never the problem. Your triggers are a spotlight, like, hey, hello, there's deeper stuff here, right? It's a little beacon. It's a little buoy out in the middle of the ocean that says, oh, I was triggered. Okay, just because you were triggered, you have to get to the deeper rooted issue of that trigger. So your reflection goes, so let's say, I don't know, lady at work yells at you. I mean, she berates you, she does all this stuff, and you feel triggered. You want to be defensive. Do not react. Let people win the day. It is okay. You do not have to walk around defending yourself left and right because it's not going to serve a purpose because you're only going to get as far as you can. I mean, don't let people walk on you, but that's where the boundaries come into play and you can just distance from it, right? But the trigger really isn't the girl at work. The trigger is the fact that your dad used to yell at you all the time when you were in third grade because your grades were low. You didn't clean the house correctly, like all of these things. So you would be berated. So that berating, there's a trigger point there. So for your feelings, and it's not the lady's fault. You don't get just mad at the lady. I mean, we don't want her to be around us. That's fine. But you're attaching your trigger to that symptom. Triggers are symptoms. They are not the cause. Trigger, symptom. Know that. Triggers are a symptom of a way deeper rooted issue. But you have to get uncomfortably comfortable with the self-reflection on the triggers, you know. Now, here's another thing to look at. What are some common themes within these triggers or within when you feel yourself getting, cause you ever meet those people? And I mean, I've been there before, like where you're just defensive about everything. They see everything's defensive. It's a common theme. If it doesn't go their way, if it doesn't go the way that they planned for it to, then it's like, you know, they react, right? So everything's reactionary, right? So you have to ask, we're not talking about other people though, we're talking about you. So you have to ask yourself in that moment, what are those sort of common themes, right? Because now you start to distance, because where you get yourself in trouble with your feelings is you keep attaching it to the boyfriend that cheated and the sister who yelled at you and the mom who did this. You're still giving them power. That is a reason, not the root. Symptom, not root. So by going through and seeing what the themes are, it's not about other people, it's about self, right? Because if you go, well, why do I tend to attract all these people who tend to like take advantage of me? I can answer that question for you without even talking to you. And that is, you don't have your boundaries. You have too high of an expectation of what you think people should be doing. It's not about blame, but it's about self-reflection. So self-reflection means you have to be very honest in this. You have to say, how does this affect me emotionally and physically? And what is the deeper root? So, and again, we'll talk about this more over on Patreon. And honestly, it's still just very much scratching the surface. Like you're going to have to do a lot deeper work with that. But when you do that, it's going to be a lot easier for you to start to identify the triggers and then eventually identify what the roots are. And then when you identify the roots, then we start healing what the roots are, right? Now, that's number one. So number two is expressing what those emotions are. I didn't say express them to the world. No. This is where those 5 journals, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5 journals. It's where the 5 journals come into play. And if you want to know about the 5 journals, go over to my YouTube, The Positivity Experience, look under playlists, go to the 5 journal series. It'll break it down for you. But you want to be able to express it and you want to have an outlet in order to do so. And no, that's not inside your brain. No, that's not inside your brain. It's journaling. It's, talking to someone without dumping on them, meaning like, hey, are you in a space to hear me? I just need to kind of work through a few things. Sure, I'm in a space to hear you. Cool, right? Sure, talking to somebody, engaging in creative things like I crochet, I have my Switch. Finding something creative. I didn't say you have to be an artist at it. I didn't say you have to be knocking it out the park. It doesn't have to be a profession, just something. And if you're like, well, I don't know what that is. Good. Go into Michael's. You'll figure out 800 different things that you will try. You're not going to pick it up from the door. I did not pick up my crochet and was like, oh my God, I'm in love with crochet. No, that took time to build. So if you're looking for some instant gratification, babe, it is not there. But what you do have to do is it has to feel authentic to you. You have to be uncomfortably comfortable with the authenticity here of this. So you have to be authentic in what you do, right? So just take your time. If you decide you want to pick up rocks, I used to do this as a small child, and I wouldn't put this past me of doing it again, especially if I found some really awesome rocks, not crystals, rocks. And I would paint my rocks. I had pet rocks. I had named my rocks. I had pet rocks. I would paint them. I collected super balls, like the cool, fun super balls. I would sometimes name them. So it's like, for me, it was creative. It didn't matter if somebody thought it was weird that you had pet rocks and that you're naming them and you're talking to them. I don't care. It was authentic to me. So be okay with it being authentic and be comfortable in that authenticity, right? Because if you're not comfortable in it, then you got to keep pushing forward, right? Just because it's not comfortable doesn't mean it's wrong. It's coming out of the box, right? So in order to separate your feelings, you have to realize this. So many people who've gone through trauma or have experienced a lot of negativity in their life, even though you hate the feelings you got, they're comfortable. There's comfortability in chaos. So in order to get out of that, A, it takes time. B, it takes effort. C, it takes consistency. You have to be consistent in the efforts. When you don't want to, it's showing up. It's behavioral activation. You do it even when you don't want to do it. So this goes into number 4. And that's validating your feelings and emotions. I didn't say everyone else around you has to validate it. You see this? Because very often you're too concerned about this person validating to prove that you are valid. And this is about you validating it. You don't get to judge yourself and be like, well, that's stupid. Why do I feel that way? I shouldn't feel this way. Oh my gosh, you're being too much of a depressional jerk. And okay, stop with the self-criticism and stop with the self-judgment. It's just a feeling. It is not a fact, but it's just like thoughts and feelings. Neither one of them are facts, but just acknowledge it. Give yourself that self-validation. Stop waiting for mom to validate it. Stop waiting for your sister or your best friend to validate it. Stop it. It's your validation. And in order to do that, you can't be hypocritical and say, well, I would be okay if my friend did this, and I would tell them, oh, you shouldn't feel bad about yourself. And then, but you're turning around and you're doing it. So it's the criticism. It's the self-judgment. That's not validating yourself, right? You did what you did. You said what you said. You're not getting that time back. You should have zero regrets. The regrets you will lose the regrets when you take the lessons. If you need to apologize to somebody, great. Do it one time. No need for an apology tour. And don't beat yourself up because you made some poor decision, because welcome to the world of being a human being. And that's where you're practicing self-compassion. You have to have self-compassion, right? Like, what do you mean that you're compassionate when it comes to other people? You're willing to be there and to take care of these people and to be that support system and to show up for them. But when it's you, you're stupid. Why'd you do that? You should know better. You're this age. You should be further along. Oh my God. Like, whoa, that's the biggest hypocritical thing ever. You don't get to be compassionate to another person and then dog yourself out. That is not self-validation. All right. And it's like, you have to remember, as a human being, you are going to experience a wide array of emotions. That's fine. Again, going back to number 1, that's very normal. We as human beings, I guess that was number 1. Not, I guess we are further along now. I guess we are in like number 4. Well, I think I said number 4, right? I think so. We're in one of those numbers. We're going to be on number 5. That I know. But it goes back to number 1. You're allowed to have these emotions. What you're not allowed to do is to project your emotions onto other people. And you're not allowed to just walk around taking on everybody else's stuff. No, that's lack of boundaries. Either from taking on their stuff, that's lack of boundaries, or for projecting your stuff. Again, that's lack of boundaries. So you have to be really, really, really careful of that. Now, number 5 is where we start getting into a lot of deeper work, like when I'm working with my clients, right? Because first we have to acknowledge it. And by the way, all 10 of these should not be done in a day. Shouldn't even be done in a week or a month. This is going to be an ongoing process. This is a tool that you will need in your arsenal, because every now and again, you're going to have some kind of a feeling. You got to go back to the drawing board and do all of these steps specifically around this order. It's not like a right way or a wrong way to do it. I like to do it in the order in which I'm giving you, because it's easier to process, but you can process it any way you want, as long as you're processing it. Because if not, you're living on that loop, and then you go into that will send you into a victim mentality. Why is this happening to me? Why me? Why can't I have what other people have? Now we go into a victim mentality because you're not giving yourself the time to process it. Okay. So number 5 is examining what the root cause is. That's right. You got to examine what that root cause is. Because like I said, when you're triggered and all those things, it is literally just a symptom of a way deeper root. So this is where you start reflecting on your past, on your childhood and old relationships, things like that. See, you got to know the why you feel. You know how you're like, I'm so sensitive. Why am I so sensitive? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, you're doing that judgment thing. Number one, don't do that. Okay, be compassionate. And then ask yourself why you feel as though this is where it's coming from. And no, being an empath is not the reason. You don't get to use being an empath as an excuse. It is a reason, not an excuse. And yes, you can bubble yourself. I promise you that you can. I do it all the time. Okay. But you have to reflect on some past experiences, right? I want you to reflect on past experiences. Okay. Are you a little stressed out because in the last 4 relationships that you've had, it's just kind of gone down the tubes and the shitter? But that's fine, but you're here now. But you still have to reflect on the past and say, what did I learn from those? And no, you didn't learn not to trust people. That's not what you learned. That's a trauma response. That isn't what you learned. Okay? And this is so imperatively important for you because you're looking for external reasons. This goes internal and this is how you're processing. So when you get to the root, and by the way, all of this should be done on paper, period. Do not, under any circumstances, do this work in your head. Absolutely not. That's why the 5 journals are important. Bring out that negative journal, and this is where we're processing stuff. Pen to pad, not brain. Let's think about it because I'm going to try to play it out and work out. You can't do it. It's neurologically proven. It is scientifically proven. You got to get it down pen to paper. And it also helps to distance from your feeling a little bit so you can observe it with a different viewpoint than just feeling it, right? So you have to ask yourself, this is where I was talking about those limited beliefs. Are your feelings hurt because in your limited beliefs, you would help this person paint, you would help this person move, you would help this person, I don't know, whatever. You would, you think that this is what's supposed to happen. And then when the person doesn't do that in return, you get your feelings hurt because in your mind, everybody should do it. That's a belief system that's always going to get you into trouble. Your belief system, your limited beliefs are your limited beliefs. They are no one else's. So when you reflect on the why, it's going to be self-reflection. Again, it's not about blame, but it is about self-reflection, right? Are you hurt because you gave too much? Now we start going into victim mode, but I gave my all. That's your first problem. Where's the boundaries? Why do you have no boundaries? So see, now we're starting to get away from the emotion piece of it, just a smidge. Still there. We don't want it to go away. We want to process it, but we're starting to, right? You see how we're processing it? And so you start to remove yourself a little bit from it because you're like, okay, I realized I didn't have boundaries. I realized I had some expectations. Now the emotions themselves start to not be as big and scary. It's not so big. You're like, okay, well, I see that. Okay, so going forward, what am I learning? What lessons am I learning about myself? See, we learn by our mistakes, our failures, and the things that we do along the way that we think are right, that, you know what, maybe it doesn't work for us. It's okay, but we learned from them. If you don't learn from them and you keep doing the same thing and you keep thinking that everybody's supposed to change, oh God, that's a way deeper issue. Get on my schedule immediately. Okay? Because nobody has to do it based on your values and your beliefs. But it is an amazing place to be because it gives you a sense of understanding, okay, well now I'm starting to come out of my emotion itself while still being hurt or feeling angry or whatever, but I'm starting to see reasons and I'm not just living in the emotional piece of it. And remember, you don't want to respond out of emotion. You want to stop and pause. This is why you got to be careful of sometimes creating a permanent solution to a temporary situation. That's fine. I'm mad. I'm leaving. You pack your bags and you leave and you run out the house. 2 days later, you're like, oh boy. Oh boy, maybe I overreacted on this one. Like you created now listen, I'm not saying if things are going bad, you don't distance. Yes. But I'm saying in this case, in this fictitious area, You were just irritated. They didn't check in on you. They didn't bring dinner. You're mad because of this expectation that you had. And so you leave because you're angry. We are done. We are over. You're creating something and now it's a problem. In that case, I'd rather you be like, okay, I'm feeling some kind of way and I'm going to distance myself from this. You're not asking permission. You just keep doing it. You just go. Stop waiting to feel comfortable. You just go. That's different because now you're getting some time away where you can kind of cool your jets a little bit. You can kind of come out of the emotional response. And it's very, very, very important for you to do that. This is why number 6 is seeking support. Book a session with me, book a session with somebody. You can't keep leaning just on your friends and family. You have to find somebody outside of yourself. Yeah, obviously you're listening to this podcast or, listen to somebody else's podcast or buy some books. But the books, the podcast, this podcast, medicine, therapy, it's only as good as you're willing to do the work and do the uncomfortable work. No one's a miracle cure worker. No one is coming to save the day for you. No one is coming to tell you how right you are. And no one's coming to give you a step-by-step directional path on how you should live the rest of your life. It's never going to happen. So you have to know that going into it. But seeking that help to help identify it, because you know how with your emotions, it gets all in there and it's all tangled up and it's all, right? And so sometimes you can't unbox it and you don't want to ask your best friend to unbox it because your best friend, who has the best intentions, by the way, typically is going to be like, yeah, he's a total jerk. And you're like, yeah. And now they're gassing you up and you're like, oh my God, this created way more problems than it needed to. So and this goes back into not telling everybody everything. Everybody doesn't need to know everything. Everybody doesn't need to know your plans. Everybody doesn't need to know everything. Yes, lean on people, ask for help, but everybody doesn't need to know your business. Stop volunteering all of this, what you're doing and what your plans are and what your feelings are. Stop doing that. Number 7 is practicing self-care. You must be your number 1 priority. I will say it now and I will say it every time we talk. You must be your number 1 priority. And self-care is doing things that are good for your body and your mind and your soul, even if you feel sabotagey, new word, sabotagey, I know. Even though you may feel like very sabotaged and, you're in your headspace and you're doing the self-sabotage and like all of those things, you're going to have to push past that for your tomorrow self. You have to push past it for your tomorrow self. That's going to look like exercise. Okay. It's exercising. Physical exercise and mental exercise, right? Especially if you're physically capable. I didn't say if you don't feel like doing it. I don't care if you feel like doing it. You do it anyway. If you're physically capable to physically move your body, you plan accordingly to do so. You also plan to do your mental exercises. For me, it's crochet. I also like to do word games and puzzles and stuff because it's think of it as like gymnastics there for your mind. So when you have those mental gymnastics that you're doing, it becomes very, very helpful, right? And so self-care goes into physical and mental exercise, okay? You're going to have to do that. Meditation is key. I help people with meditation. I always recommend twice a day. You do not have to. That is not from the start. Down the road, I'd like for you to get to be twice a day. And it's not just clearing your mind and going, and clearing your mind. It's also active meditation, doing your dishes by hand, going for a walk in nature, vacuuming with no music on, vacuuming with music on. Like there's a ton of things, okay? But you have meditation, yoga. Yoga is a great one for this, right? Yoga is really good for self-care. Deep breathing exercises, right? Getting enough sleep without forcing yourself to get sleep. Balanced diet. This doesn't mean cut out your carbs and cut out all the sugar. We're not going to be extreme. Balanced diet. Enjoy that bite. Enjoy that chocolate cake, and then enjoy two things of salad. Or that too. Salad and water and various things like that. And then of course it's engaging in your hobbies. It's allowing yourself to engage in hobbies. Do your crochet. It's allowing yourself to, in my case, it's crochet. It's my switch. It's find a hobby. If you're not sure what that hobby is, take a trip to Michael's. Take a trip to Michael's, like I was saying before. Look online, try something new. Think about picking up a pen and paper and doodle, color, something like that. Okay. Now, number 8 is giving yourself time, right? You got to give yourself the time and the patience to do this. It is a continuous lifelong process. So you're going to have to do that. So number 9 goes into the consistency. 9 is being consistent with these practices. 9 is being consistent with exploring some opportunities, exploring different things that you can do, and allowing yourself to feel it, which is number 10. And the last one, and that is allow yourself to feel your feelings and label them. And label them not just on a hierarchy, label them in depth. In depth. So instead of saying I'm sad, don't say I'm sad. What does sad feel like to you? Put it down on paper. What does sadness? What does anger? What does frustration? What do these things feel and look like to you? And this goes in that negative journal. When you drop that in the negative journal, because what happens is you do things on such a high level, right? You are like in that space of going, I'm sad. I feel hurt. I feel betrayed. Okay. You don't feel betrayed. Betrayal is an action. You don't feel betrayed. What's the feeling that you have? Do you feel like you trusted somebody? Do you feel like you had an expectation? Do you feel like you gave too much? Do you feel like you fell in love with an idea and not the reality? Do you feel as though you did that? See, do you see what I mean? So when you get it down on paper, and again, not in your brain, when you get it down on paper, you're allowing yourself to see it and put eyeballs on it, right? Well, but I don't like it. This isn't how I would do it. Okay, good. Now that goes into expecting you out of people. Do you see what I'm saying? When you become more self-aware and and you go, this person did this and this person did that. It's not about the actions. Actions and words carry no emotion. Actions are actions, words are words. I didn't say they can't hurt you. I said they don't carry emotion, right? Somebody being sarcastic with me, I carry my life sarcastically, is never going to hurt me. Sarcasm is like, oh my God, that's funny. Well, for you, it might. That doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't. So again, you have to reflect. You have to know yourself. You have to have that opportunity to sit and be in depth with what those feelings are. So that's 10 ways that you can start processing these emotions. What you're not going to do is go, Mom told me. The problem is you're living on the loop of the person, of the action, of the situation, and you're trying to make sense of it. Their why may never make sense to you. You don't need their why to heal. It doesn't matter what their why is. You don't need that to heal. So your feelings, you have to get clear as to why you have them in the first place. Identify them, allow yourself to feel them, process them by getting distance from them, by putting it down on paper, identifying them. What's the patterns? What's the past stuff? And look at your triggers as amazing. Your triggers are saying, hey, here's a little beacon that says, hey, this is what you need to work on. That's the important factor. And then this way, because your body keeps a score, there's literally a book on that called The Body Keeps a Score. So just because you accept something in your mind, that doesn't mean that you don't have that lingering feeling. So to have that lingering feeling, it's up to you to process it, right? Oh, well, I want my sisters to do this. Okay, now we're going back into expectation. So this helps you identify it and articulate it in a way that you can start to process. I didn't say you have to love it, but until you can feel it, get through it, and analyze it and take accountability on what you need to do going forward, whether it's setting boundaries, whether it's working on more self, whether it's healing some traumas, whether it's staying in the present space, whether it's letting go of expectations, this is all so important for you. But this will help you so much in the actual process of it. And that is just the way that we help to start processing. Now, over on Patreon, we're going to go deeper into some actions with a worksheet that you can do to really get rid of not get rid of your feelings, but once you process it, what are some kind of, I call them alternative ways, because you guys know I'm kind of woo-woo, alternative ways to release some of this, to see it disappear, to see it go, to take some ownership in it. And we're going to continue it over there. But I promise you, this is a great start. And this is something that you can carry with you forever and a day. But it takes time. It takes patience. It takes consistency. If you're not willing to do it scared and you're not willing to put your ego down, also go on to my YouTube and look at the ego death series. If you're not willing to put your ego down, you're going to live in the they should, they could, they would. Okay. But that being said, I want you to get in and start feeling your feelings. Check it out.